this is what they want. They want a civil war. They will do whatever they can to get a civil war, and we as individuals must stand up to the notion of the civil war, because it's not the civil war that benefits us. It's a civil war that benefits them. Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, a World Alternative Media here, and as many of you might know, there was a shooting at a protest in Denver between left-wing protesters and right-wing protesters, and by the looks of it, by a security guard who worked for the local news, 9 News, and we're going to get into this story here. As you see from The Guardian, a man shot dead in Denver during rival left and right-wing protests. A television station security guard has been arrested after the incident outside the city's art museum. You see this article out of the Denver Post. It says, 1 dead after gunfire at downtown Denver rallies. Private security guard on contract by 9 News in custody. Patriot rally and BLM Antifa soup drive, both planned for Saturday. And you could see these two yelling at each other, one with a Black Guns Matter shirt, and then this militiaman, that's what they say he is anyway, who later ended up getting shot dead. A very interesting story we're going to get into here, because this is all too common. We have this article from Zero Hedge, Patriot rally attendee killed by security guard in Denver. And I think this article is the best one to go into, because it kind of gives you the best picture of the chronological things that led up to the shooting. So we're going to get into that. I have to point out, this is becoming all too common, and there's a reason for that, because when you have the media, when you have the government, when you have popular culture driving people against each other, say there's a problem, a real problem, whether it be police brutality, whether it be big government, people always end up getting distracted by the real problems behind the curtains here and end up fighting each other, infighting and being distracted from the real enemy. For example, you have the issue of wealth inequality. Okay, well, you can look no further than the Federal Reserve and inflation and the printing of currency for one of the major reasons why we see wealth inequality. What about racism? Well, you can look no further than the government running crack into black neighborhoods for years. We've interviewed Freeway Rick Ross on this back in February, who was one of the prime people involved with the CIA and the Nicaraguan government and the US government running crack into black neighborhoods, destroying the black family, pushing them into poverty, and then forcing them to end up becoming more and more dependent, which creates this culture. And this culture leads to people not looking at that problem, but instead looking at other races as the issue. There's more white men than anyone else in government that cause this problem, so let's go after the white man instead of going after the government, the biggest, most oppressive, most racist system in the world. Same thing with the issue of pollution. Government is the biggest polluter. Same thing with the issue of crime and murder and all that kind of stuff. Government is the biggest MVP for that as well. And then you go to the other side and you have a lot of people who are like, oh, well, in order to stop this, we have to stop all these black people or whatever it might be. Go after that race. And then you have this opposition that's insane. And then you have another opposition that's more libertarian, that's just like, hey, the issue is government. Let's all work together. And then you have, people like the Black Guns Matter protesters, which I'm a big fan of, actually, because it does solve a part of the problem. The violence in black neighborhoods has been propped up by government, but has been perpetuated as they destroy the black family. And then you end up with all this violence, and then they look for government and handouts and welfare to stop that issue from happening that the government created in the first place. So you have a perpetual circle. And instead of focusing on the real enemy, government, they focus on each other. That protester is my enemy. That protester is my enemy. That militiaman, that Black Lives Matter guy. It's all a part of a script, and it's the Caesarean approach of order out of chaos and divide and conquer. And we're going to get into this article on this rally and the death of an attendee in a moment. But first, make sure to hit that like button, check the links below, GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. We are completely demonetized on YouTube and 100% viewer funded. We appreciate anything you guys can do to keep us up and running. We are going to Flote, LBRY, and BitChute, or Odysee. LBRY is kind of morphed into Odysee now. But nonetheless, we're going to those alternative platforms to post videos exclusively soon, and we're getting off of YouTube by November 5th of 2020, so we hope that you find us over there because we have no choice. They're either going to take us down or we're going to walk away and tell people where they can go and find our information. It's only one site away, one link away, so I really appreciate any of you guys going there, as well as joining our newsletter at www.iambanned.com, or getting one of our t-shirts or some of our merchandise at our Teespring store, link below too. Anyway, make sure to hit that like button and share on social media. Let's get into this article. As this article says, Patriot rally attendee killed by security guard in Denver. And it points out that the most recent update was that the shooter has been reported to be a bodyguard for a local news reporter with no affiliation to Antifa, according to the Denver police. The private security guard in custody was contracted through Pinkerton by 9 News. It has been the practice of 9 News for a number of months to contract private security to accompany staff at protests. DPD originally took 2 people into custody and later found the second individual, a 9 News producer who works in the investigative unit, was not involved in the incident. The producer is no longer in police custody and is not a suspect. You see this picture right here from Jack Pospiak. This is right after the protester was shot. And just, I want to be clear that there are some graphic images here. Not extremely graphic, but nonetheless, it shows a dead person. So be aware of this, and if you don't want to see any of that, look away. You see this out of Twitter as well. Demand the Denver police disclose a picture of shooter's tattoo. It shows Space Invaders Against Racism was the tattoo on the security guard's arm. You don't have to be Antifa to be like against racism, but obviously the media has propped up the anti-racism movement to be something that it didn't originally start off as. As it continues in this article, it says, it appears that during an altercation, the Patriot rally attendee slapped the bodyguard who pulled his gun, got maced, then fired on the man. And you could see this photo where he slapped the man before he shot him. And it's pretty cut and paste there. Then you have, he sprayed pepper spray, and I'll show you the picture of him spraying pepper spray in a moment, but this is like a second after. He was already dead standing at this point. But he got shot after the altercation, after spraying pepper spray. It says, shortly after shots rang out, at least one presumed leftist could be heard celebrating that the man was shot right in the effing dome. And we won't play that video. We can't anyway. The video will be taken down. And as it continues here, it says, a man initially reported as a participant in a Denver Patriot rally was shot and killed by another man on Saturday near the Denver Art Museum, according to the Denver Post. A suspect, an employee of 9 News, is in custody. Early reporting suggested that the suspect was an Antifa participant in an anti-police counter rally. However, the Post has updated their report to say that the shooter's affiliation is unknown after police took issue with the initial characterization. Video of the incident appears to show the man drawing and spraying pepper spray as a shot rang out, and you could see this insane picture right here. At this point, the bullet was already out of the gun, so this man was already technically dead while spraying this. Unbelievable photo. Imagine just the fact that that photo was taken at that moment is just insane. You have further information down here. It says, updated Denver Post staff member witnessed the fatal confrontation. The story has been updated after authorities called into question the accuracy of that journalist's report concerning the affiliation of the shooter. In a news conference after the incident, Division Chief Joe Montoya said police could not confirm the shooter's or the victim's affiliation, but said the incident started as a verbal altercation. 2 guns were found at the scene, he said, as well as a mace can. When asked about the 9 News report, Montoya said he could not confirm any connection, only saying that the department was still interviewing witnesses. One of those witnesses was a Denver Post photojournalist. We're hopeful, and I quote, we're hopeful that as soon as possible we can get the factual information out as to what led to this, who the individuals involved were, Montoya said. We're hopeful that that information will help kind of calm the waters a little bit, according to the Denver Post. According to the Denver channel, several police officers in riot gear were already on the scene when the shooting occurred, attempting to perform crowd control. The shooting is being investigated as a homicide, while charges have not yet been filed against the suspect. So this is very interesting information that's coming out, because again, This is exactly what not just the media, but the government and the establishment has wanted to see for a long time. And they tried to do it in the 1960s, and they're continuing to do it now in a very chaotic year, obviously, as people are out of work, people are poor, poverty is skyrocketing, people are losing their homes. I mean, it's been a tragic year, and not as much because of the virus, but because of the lockdowns, which was a catalyst for all of this, the economy completely crumbling before our eyes. Though, while on the veneer it kind of looks good, but it's all just papered over and fake. And when push comes to shove, once all the businesses figure out that they have zero money left and they're bankrupt, they're insolvent, then probably early in 2021, we're going to see a mass apocalypse of businesses. Anyway, it's going to lead to more struggles. It'll lead to more protests. The protests are going to be divided by politics rather than, in the perspective of the basic good of humanity. Not the greater good of the greater number, that collectivist mantra, but the fact that we as humans can't be human anymore, and we're driven against each other and attacking each other, while the real enemy sits there rubbing their hands together, laughing at us and thinking how stupid we are, and that we've fallen for their tricks of divide and conquer, which, by the way, this is on both sides. This is on both sides of the collectivist paradigm of left and right, the circular, spectrum, really, I should say, of collectivism. It's on both sides. But this is what they want. They want a civil war. They will do whatever they can to get a civil war, and we as individuals must stand up to the notion of the civil war, because it's not the civil war that benefits us. It's a civil war that benefits them. We are clashing against each other, attacking each other for whatever side of government we want. Nah, I don't want any of that. I want to stand for free humanity, free individuals, individualism, and voluntarism. I don't consent to, I don't think people should be able to consent to voting in a criminal to rule their neighbor. That's not real consent. Consent matters. There's a term that people should be using more instead of this matters, that. Consent matters, and that goes for everyone. So we have this strange situation as well, where we also see a lot of people on the left supporting Black Guns Matter, which is a very interesting dynamic, because Black Guns Matter started as more like a libertarian thing. I've met the guy who started Black Guns Matter, and he's a cool guy with a lot of cool ideas. And the idea is that instead of being a victim, you be the change you wish to see in the world and defend yourself against tyranny. And the tyranny is coming from the government. There's just a whole bunch of puppets and cheerleaders that cheer on one side, and then you have a bunch of puppets and cheerleaders on the other side that cheer on the other side, rather than looking at the basics. We're being oppressed by government. We shouldn't be the victim. We should be the prevalent victor in this battle between good and evil. And that's really what it is at the end of the day. It's a battle between good and evil. I'm not going to be able to translate that to the vast majority of far leftists, and I'm not going to be able to translate that to the large majority of, the more Trump supporting people like that. I can't. I've tried for years. There's no helping that situation. If people don't get that the government is a problem, and it doesn't matter if it's left or right, maybe on the right there's less government, so it's less oppressive in some ways, but either way, it's still asking for the exact same thing, and collectivism begets collectivism, and it grows no matter what. So you look on one side or the other, oh, you got rid of a little bit of government, you have small government now? Well, it's going to grow, and it's still the exact same thing that you don't consent to in that way, but then you pick and choose and you're inconsistent, and you say, but that little amount is okay. Well, maybe other people don't want that little amount. Maybe they just want to, be free. You don't have a right to enforce crazy, stupid ideas on your neighbor, and getting an organized crime racket called government to go after your neighbor and enforce those things on them. So it's just really basic stuff, folks. So what I'm getting at, and I know I'm rambling, but I think this is a very important issue to bring up in the context of this story out of Denver, is that we have these people attacking each other. You now have Black Guns Matter people on the left and the right, and they're going after militiamen. And at the end of the day, they kind of both want the same thing. They want to be left alone, and they don't want to be stolen from. They don't want to be, abused and oppressed. Okay, fine. If we could just leave it at there, that would be great. But we can't, because obviously a lot of them get really passionate about their collectivist belief system and say, well, for that reason, we want you to be called a terrorist organization, and the other one's like, we want you guys to be called a terrorist organization. Then this side's like, you're a Nazi, even though they're not Nazis. And the other side is like, you're a commie or an anarchist. And that's a good one. They call them anarchists when they want big government. It's like, no, they're not anarchists. So you end up with this confusion, and it's a perfect situation for the establishment to be able to rein in this kind of stuff. We talked with G. Edward Griffin, author of The Creature from Jekyll Island, who's running the Red Pill Expo in Georgia right now at Jekyll Island itself, who recently told us, his idea, and you could find this video on our channel, his prediction of the future. His idea is that most likely what they'll do is they will get, all these people on the left to do the craziest stuff, to the point where even most leftists will look at it and say, like, no rational person can look at these people and say it's the right thing and that it's reasonable or it makes any sense. So generally they're going to try and distance themselves and walk away. And what you'll end up having is all these people going and voting for Trump, for example. But then, because government is government, and there is a deep state, and that deep state isn't just Obama holdovers, it's just a global government deep state that's existed for over a century. What you'll end up seeing is then the chaos is going to get even crazier in the streets if he wins. And if he wins, with the chaos comes people begging for help from the government, the very entity that created the chaos in the first place. So the government says, okay, fine, sure, you got me. Here's martial law. And then they put it forward, martial law. And this is after further lockdowns and all that kind of stuff. And what do you get out of that? You have complete government control in the streets. You have military in the streets, military police. You have a police state, basically, that will be the answer for the anti-police stuff, which is, again, more irony. So people are just basically asking for more government and finding new ways to grow the size and scope of the government in their own way. In some ways, under the guise of wanting to shrink the government. In some ways, under the guise of wanting to, stop oppression. And both sides lead to more oppression, and both sides lead to bigger government. I'm all for a lot of the militia men out there that are actually just consistently saying we have enough of government. It's government that's a problem. But when you have these highly emotional, clashes in the streets between far leftists and people on the right, it doesn't do any good for anyone. It just continues to distract and misdirect people towards this little faction and this divide, when there's all this going on over here on the military-industrial complex, a massive amount of printing of currency, the massive regulations, the lockdowns that have bankrupted millions of people and destroyed most small businesses, propping up big monopolies, which the left will come back in and say, we need to regulate and tax and do this to stop these big monopolies, which will create bigger monopolies because it will be impossible to compete in the market. Just all this kind of stuff adds up. Or you have the big pharma monopolies that are going around. One day the left says they hate big pharma, and the next day, and they say they hate monopolies, and the next day you have the biggest monopoly in the world, one of the biggest lobbies in the world, big pharma, deciding whether people can or cannot go to the store without a vaccine or without a social credit score tied to the bank account, tied to your job, like social security numbers, and tied to, buying a house or travel and going into public places. Then you end up with technocracy like China. You just have all these factions adding up, and these are huge issues, and then people are worried and complaining and clashing with each other, in many ways rightly so, but it's all emotional, it's all set up, because you have some leftists that say, I hate police, and you have some people on the right that also really don't like police, but they're like, we love Trump and we hate the left, and then you have these people clashing together, and is one side better than the other? Of course, but that's the trap. That's the trap that they want you in. It's not about whose side is better or more reasonable than the others. It's the fact that both are distractions. Stop being distracted. Break away from the distractions. Rule yourself. Live by example. Live free. Be responsible. Responsibility is freedom, and it takes that to win the war. Just like they won't enforce tyranny with too much violence, the government anyway, because it will be unpopular. They will install tyranny by the consent of the vast majority of the public. We as individuals need to ensure freedom without being extremely violent, but by just not consenting, disobeying, being free, being responsible, being self-sustainable, stuff we talked about for years here at WHAM. And then slowly but surely they will lose their power. But more of us have to do that and stop being scared and cowering in a corner because, oh, maybe we might go to jail or get arrested or be frowned upon by the public and by social circles or whatever. We need to break free as individuals, and shooting at each other and killing each other isn't the way to do it. That's how you ensure that the government long-term wins. Anyway, now that I'm finished this ranting and raving, I really appreciate everyone watching. Make sure to hit that like button, share on social media to get around the shadow banning. Check those links below. We are completely demonetized. We have Bitcoin and all of our crypto addresses as well in our Cointree address link. And of course, we have, GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. We have Flote.app, BitChute, LBRY, or Odysee, where you can find all of our videos as well, because we are leaving YouTube by November 5th. And of course, join our newsletter at www.iamband.com. There's Teespring as well that you could go to. And by the way, if you want to join our newsletter, all it takes is an email, so it's really easy. And of course, I'm in Montenegro right now, in Pagorica, and I'm going to Kotor in a few days. I moved out here because I sold all of my stuff. I sold all my possessions. I got rid of the house I was renting. I got rid of my vehicle, all my bills, everything I own, and living out of a backpack in order to continue making these videos because I was demonetized and bankrupted. It's about $400 a month for rent out here. So I want to clarify, I'm not here on vacation. I'm here so I can make videos for you guys because I've sacrificed everything I own in order to do that. Now, some people will still troll and say, oh, he's on a vacation. It's not a vacation. It's something that I needed to do for the sake of my survival. And I went through Amsterdam on a layover on my way over to Montenegro. So no, I'm not traveling around vacationing. I'm going to places in the Balkans in order to live cheap in old Yugoslavia, because it's the only way I can manage to continue bringing you guys videos. It's also in many ways more free. So anyway, I'll update you guys more on that later. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. My friends, it is go time. We are completely demonetized on YouTube, and we depend on the viewer to stay alive and spread the message of freedom and truth. So check those links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar, anything you guys could do to help keep independent media alive helps enormously in helping spread this message to the masses. So make sure to check those links. Donate to our Bitcoin address on the screen or below. We really appreciate anything you could do to keep us alive. You could check those links below for Cointree as well, where you can find other cryptocurrencies that you can donate and keep WHAM alive. Find us on Flote.app, Flote.app, as well as BitChute and LBRY and Minds. We're on all the other platforms. We are leaving YouTube soon, so make sure to find us at those sites, because it's the only way we can keep talking to you, the masses, the great people that actually care about the future of free humanity. Also, join our new newsletter at www.iamband.com. Anything helps at this point, guys. We need to support free information online. This is the most difficult time in our history, and it takes a lot of hard work to keep our message alive in the face of great evils that have taken over the propaganda news on television as well as on YouTube, where YouTube decides what you can or cannot see. We need your help, my friends. So I really appreciate anything you guys can do. Check those links. There's many ways you can help. Until next time, though, thanks, everyone. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.